So the first one is sometimes you just want to highlight your data here and you have a look at the sum, but maybe now you want to add the total. So instead of doing a sum function here, there's an easier way to save you time. Highlight the row here, look at the sum, just click on the sum and it's copied it to the clipboard, Control V, and there you have it. Now the second one is, say that you want to highlight all the 5s in the same color, but you go onto that and as you scroll down you realize there's another one. Instead of highlighting then every single cell, there is a better way to do this. Now F4 is a function that we are going to use to repeat our action. So let's start again, highlight this in yellow and scroll down to the 5 and once again just press F4 and it just repeats your last action. There you go. Let's have a look at a function called naming cells. Now what you can do is if you want to calculate 5% of a tax from the price, you would simply go to the price and multiply it by this reference here. Now to make sure that the same reference is taken down all the range of cells, you simply need to do F4 and that locks the reference to the 5%. And you can drag that down so that goes all the way down, and 5%, there's nothing wrong with that. So another way to do it is to use the naming cell function. So let's remove this. What we can do is this cell is F2, as you can see up here. We can call this the tax rate. Now make sure that there's no spaces when you name the cell. And now what you can do is that instead of F2, this cell is now referenced as tax rate equals, we go to the price and times by, instead of F4, we are now going to type in tax rate. And as you can see, this one is right here. Press enter. Now you don't need to worry about having any of the functions to make sure that circular references are not done, or you can make sure that you don't make any errors when you do this formula. Okay, let's look at moving columns. Now, if we wanted to add the price to this column and move the quantity sold, we would probably do a Control X and then we would insert the cut cells and that we find them here, or we could Control C, we might insert them here and we might have to delete these here. So this is not the way to do it. I'll show you an easier way. So we go over here, now highlight the column, press Shift. Once you've holding down Shift, you'll see the arrows come up with the 4 corners like that. Now you just move it and you will find this next to this column over here. We'll look at the find formula function now. Sometimes when you have an array or a table and you have a formula, you can see that this formula is now referenced to the quantity, so therefore the percentage column should add up to 100%. But in this case it's not. So instead of scrolling down one by one to checking each of the formulas, you can simply highlight the range and then go across to find and select, and you go to formulas. Once you've clicked onto formulas, you can see that the ranges with the formulas are highlighted and the one without, which is the 8% here, does not have a formula. So let's click into that and you can see this is a hard-coded number. So once again, we can just drag the formula down and now it turns back to 100%. Next, we look at zeros. In some barcodes or in some serial numbers, you may want to have a 0 at the beginning of your code. And here we have a number and here we have numbers with 0. So you can notice a difference and you have a little arrow here. What you can do is if you want to add a 0 is, let's try this. If you add the 0 to the number, it simply disappears. So the only way to do this is to have a single apostrophe, 0. And now you can see you have now a little green triangle here, which tells you that this number is stored as text and you can convert this to a number if you want to. Coming in at number 7 is to remove background. So Excel is not just a number tool. You can use it for very simple creative functions. So we click onto the image that you've imported, double click on that and it brings up the picture format. Simply click on remove background. Now this image is quite symmetrical and the background is quite clear, but if it wasn't, you may want to mark areas that you want to keep or remove areas that you may not. So maybe you just want the screen, you can actually just remove the areas. For example, if you want to remove the keyboard, you could do that. We're just going to keep the whole laptop, Press OK, and now you have an image which is there without the background. And you can use things like crop and or any other function that you want to make it according to your size. Now let's have a look at date and sequences. Now, if we want to have a date, we can just type in the date and who is guilty of now dragging all the way down to the end of the year. No, there is an easier way to do this. Now we add the date here, we go across to this icon here, we go down to series, and we make sure that we click the columns. If you keep it on rows, it will go into rows. Click on the date, click on date. We're going to step up one value at a time, means a day at a time. If you want to do it 7 days, if you want a week at a time, you could have the beginning of the weeks here as well. But just for this, we're going to have a look at 31st December 2023. Press OK, and now you have a range that if you go to the bottom, you'll see the end there. Moving on to the rep function, and this essentially repeats what you're going to tell it to do. We want to repeat a text, so we type in the text, and the text is going to be a straight line, and there we go. And how many times do we want this to repeat? We want it to repeat for quantity amount of time. So when we close the bracket, we get 2 straight lines here. And if we drag the formula, we can see that we have 5, 10, 12. Well, this doesn't really look very nice. So the best way to make this look like a little mini graph is to go across to the font, type in Stencil, and there you have it. A nice little bar chart shows you very easily what you want to have a look at. And finally, we come to the switch function. What this does essentially is very similar to an if function, but with a little less complexity. So what we're going to do here is we type in switch. We want to look at the key here. So for an A, we want to swap it for excellent, and a B, we switch it for average, and C for fail. So what is the expression? The expression is here. And now what we want to do is we look at the letter A, close the bracket, a comma here, and instead of A, we want it to say excellent. So we type that in, close the bracket, and now again, instead of B, what do we want it to say? We want it to say average. We'll close that bracket there, and the final one is C. Type in C. And instead of C, we want it to say fail. Close the bracket, close the apostrophe, and we close the bracket, and there you go. Now, when we drag this down, you can see excellent, average, fail, and if this changes to a B, that will automatically change, and if this changes to a C or an A, we can dynamically change the grade as we want. Well, I hope that you've enjoyed those tricks and tips, and I hope that you've learned something new. Comment down below on the one that you didn't know, and if you like and enjoy content like this, then please consider liking and subscribing, and hopefully I will see you in the next video. Take care for now.